Hi, crafters, and welcome to Technique of the Week. So this week I was inspired by my designer series paper, DSP, that was showing all the sunrises and sunsets on the water. So for those who don't have the Scenic Coast DSP or designer series paper, I thought let's work on sunrises and sunsets as background for our own cards. So I have some basic white. These are just panel cards because we might be bring them down. And I have a color palette here. Let me move this down just a little bit. I have a color palette to kind of mimic what we see. Now I'm thinking this is more of a sunset look. To me, this is sunset. To me, this is like sunrise. And I did look online and picked out some inspirations for it also. This more sunrise, this going into your sunset. So let's go ahead and make some sunrise and sunset DSP or background pages of our own. So let's start with what I call sunrise. So for sunrise, your sky is going to start getting light blue up here and your horizon is going to be dark. Now, if you want to, let me grab a post-it note because I always feel like the horizon line needs to be very defined. So for this sunrise, we're going to have the blue be right at the horizon and get lighter as you go up. All right, let me put my brushes over here. Sorry for that weird noise. Let me put my brushes over here and let's start with that horizon where it's starting to get dark just along that line. So I'm going to get a little of that misty moonlight. But I'm going to make sure a lot of it comes off here. And I'm just going to barely hit the edge of that paper, of that cardstock. Now you could use Night of Navy. I wanted to kind of keep it a little more, I guess, muted. All right. So there you have that dark line right on the horizon. If you wanted to do it a little bit more, because that is kind of light, let's do just, again, just hitting that edge just barely. All right, and let's come over here. I'm going to go a little further down just because we have less area to play with. Let's see, most of it is going on that line. Now, I'm not going to use this as we blend upward into the sky, only because we want that to be a little more natural. All right, so there's that blue. Now we're going to go into our kind of lavenderish look. Now I am going to also just take a little bit of color off there because it's going to be very, very concentrated. And I'm just taking that into that blue. Just lightly getting some of that lavender in there. All right. Now we're going to go into a little bit of orange because we're going to be getting into the yellow where the sun is, but then we're going to have the light blue sky up above. So you know what? I'm going to go really, I'm just going to get color on the edge of the brush, not the whole brush. Again, we're going to come over here, get a lot of that orange off, and we're just going to lightly go in on the edge of that brush. And then you are going to get some residual lines. That's all right. That can be considered like your cloud base. All right, now we're going to go into yellow. Now remember, my yellow has the glitter on it. There's a horrific glitter incident a few months back. All right, here we're just blending in that yellow very lightly. We're going to overtake most of that orange. And then I'm also going to use this to blend that orange into that lavender. You want to be careful though. Yellow and purple or lavender does make brown, so you don't want to do a lot. So let's just get some of that yellow in there. And now for our last, we're going to be using the morning sky. And for this, I'm using Coastal Cabana. Now this, I don't mind if it's as bright, because that is that sun and that sky meeting for your new morning. Now, you want to be careful not going into the yellow too much because that will make green. You could also use your Azure Afternoon here if you really wanted a real big blue sky, but this is a morning sun. So we're just going to have it peeking in. You know what? Let me go, because that is looking, because Coastal Cabana kind of does have like a greenish look to it as is. Let me go grab my Azure Afternoon, and we'll do that on this one here. So hang on one sec. All right. Here's your Azure Afternoon. And again, we don't want to get into that yellow too much because we don't want to make green. I'll be bringing this over here because that Coastal Cabana, it does have a green effect to it as is. So there you are. There is your sunrise. So here you could then put in your little scenery if you wanted to. You could add your little die cuts if we have enough time, if it's not too late, and if my battery's not running out, because my battery on my phone looks like it's about ready to give. But we would also cut these down a little. And if you wanted to make this like grass, and you would start doing your greens and coming out that way. But for now, let's put those sunrises off to the side. Now let's bring in our sunset. Okay, so sunsets kind of pretty much go in the opposite direction, except your blue up here is going to turn more purplish as it's hitting the edge. So you kind of go in reverse, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and let's grab this. We'll start over here first. So I'm going to stay with the Azure Afternoon on this. And this, remember, we're just making that little line where our horizon is meeting the changing into night. All right, and then we'll do this over here. Let me get this somewhat straight. Oops, I went a little too far over there. But we have a lot of area to cover on this one, so I think we're okay. All right. Now, let's go into, we're going to have very little yellow. Very little yellow. Because we want more of that orange to be showing up. So I'm just going to put a thin line here. All right, I don't even know if you can see that. Let's see. Very, very thin yellow. Now we're going to go in with that orange. Now I am using pumpkin pie. You could use timid tiger also. Get a lot of that because that orange is such a strong color, and I did kind of wipe the edge. But let's go ahead. Oh, all right, we'll take care of that. Don't worry, I had orange on me apparently. And I'm going to start up here away from the yellow, but then I'll blend it into that yellow ever so slightly. And then if you want to do a little residual yellow near the top. But now we're going to go in strong with the Fresh Freesia. Here you could almost use Highland Heather too. Or even, I think Gorgeous Grape would be too dark. But you're really going to get that burst of that violet or purplish look as it turns into your dark night. Now you have to be careful because these colors aren't near each other on the color wheel, so they will turn brown if they're mixed in too much. All right, I am going to go all the way to the top with this because we are going to just bring in that blue just ever so slightly. And again here, you could use Misty Moonlight, you could use Night of Navy. Anything is a little bit of your darker color. And now we're just going to bring that in at the very top. Okay. I think that's it for my colors. Let me put these kind of back over here. Let me move this out of the way. Back over to where it belongs. And then here is that sunset. So here you have sunrise, sunset. All right. And like I said, if you wanted to, then you could take your dies. I don't know if I have any in here. I don't. But you could always then, on the sunrise, let's see. I think I would want to use more of a light blue. Let me go ahead, just do this really quickly. All right, so this is about 1.5 inches up. So I'm going to make this I'm going to cut this off right here. So this part will be a little more up. So let's see. Let me figure out. That is right at 3 inches. So I'm going to cut this off at 3 inches. Let me go the length of this. So let's go 5.5 on that. And I'm not going to do all 4, but I'm just going to show you this is how you would incorporate the cardstock, the background paper that you've made. All right, let me grab out my plates. For thin die embossing or cutting, you would use platform 1, platform 2, and then you're going to use 2 of the 3s. Let me just go like this. Put a little tape down there just to kind of hold it in place. Let's run that through. All right. Take that little piece out. Take that little piece out there. Let me close this up. Put it back over here for now. All right, so if you're leaving at the full card length, I probably would take my blue, my residual blue, and put just a little bit of blue down here for like an ocean or water look. I would not make it dark at all. There, we have some choppy waves there. So let's go ahead and let's put some glue down. We're going to let this sit for a second so it doesn't smush out. But I am doing very thin in the corners. You want those corners tacked down. And I'm pretty much just doing it thin everywhere. Just so, like I said, it won't smush out. Excuse me, sorry about that. I might have to trim it just a tiny bit. Oops, I didn't put any underneath there. Let's get out. Do I have a dark blue or a blue base? Looks like I do. You're really not going to see any of that base, but this would be your finished card. Probably would trim this down just a hair. So let's bring that to that 5 1/4. Yes, you're going to be cutting into some of that scenery, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. And then we'll bring this down to the 4. And then you would leave this area here for your greeting. You could also, if you wanted to, you could rip this through here and like back here. So just only this is showing up. But that's a good way to show your sunrise. I'm sorry, your sunset. And then this is your sunrise. So, all right. I've gabbed on long enough. But there is your technique of the week, creating your own sunrise and sunset backgrounds. Let me know what you think. Give me that thumbs up if you don't mind. Share on your social media. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Most of all, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.